Welcome to Monday Motivation. It's great to be with you today. To letting go of shame to nurture emotional well-being. I'm Terry Stirk. Thank you for joining me today. I know how valuable your time is and everything you have on your plate, so I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to spend a few minutes with me. I always enjoy this time each week. So today we're talking about a quiet but heavy emotion, and that is shame. Shame can impact how we see ourselves, how we connect with others, and how we show up in life. It's something that I have studied and learned a lot about and experienced it myself. So I'll also be sharing some insight from my book, Nurture Emotional Well-Being for Women. Shame is all the way through this book because it's stories of women who've been through traumatic experiences, and most of us have. And shame is very, very common in traumatic experiences because we're looking for a reason something happened. And so we often wonder, was it me? What did I do to deserve this? Those sorts of things. And so we feel shame. It's a part of the healing journey. So it's very normal. But we're going to talk about how we can address the shame and heal from it. Again, using pain to help us heal. So let's talk about what shame really is. There's a big difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I made a mistake. But shame says, I am a mistake. And that difference matters. Shame is deeply personal and it's tied to our identity. Often it's not even based on what we actually did or what actually happened, but what we believe about ourselves. It can be inherited through family dynamics, through generations, picked up in childhood and handed to us through rejection, abandonment, abuse, critical illnesses, unmet expectations. In my book, I share the story of a woman who carried shame after surviving her own trauma. She blamed herself for things that were not hers to carry. That's what shame does. It makes you feel like you are the problem or you created the problem instead of recognizing what happened to you. If you're feeling that way right now, please hear this. Shame doesn't tell the truth. It tells the story of pain, but not the story of you. So how shame shows up in everyday life. Let's talk about that. Because it can follow us around, especially when we're in a healing journey. It's not always obvious. You might not even call it shame, but you feel it. Here are some ways it often appears. People pleasing or perfectionism. If you constantly feel the need to be enough or do everything right to be loved, shame might be at work. Another way is difficulty accepting compliments. Do you downplay praise or brush off kind words or make up an excuse why they're wrong with the compliment? That may come from believing deep down that you're unworthy and shame. Fear of being seen. If you hide parts of yourself out of fear people won't accept you, that's often rooted in shame. Feeling undeserving of love or success, you might self sabotage or feel like good things aren't meant for you. One passage in my book addresses this. It says, the voice of shame is rarely loud, but it's persistent. It whispers that you're not lovable, not capable, not worthy, until you forget that it's actually a lie and you start believing it as your truth. That's what we're trying to unlearn today. Brene Brown dedicated her life to studying shame, courage, and vulnerability and how they are related. If you've read her work or watched any of her TED Talks, you're familiar with her powerful message on this topic. One of her most quoted lines is this: shame cannot survive being spoken. It cannot survive empathy. Let that sink in. Shame lives in secrecy, in the dark, in silence. But the moment we speak it aloud in a safe space and are met with empathy, not judgment, then it begins to lose its power. Brene teaches that vulnerability is the antidote to shame. And that's hard, especially when we've been taught to hide the messy parts of our stories. But healing doesn't happen through perfection. It happens through truth-telling, through being real, and through connection with others. So if you're struggling with shame today, I want to encourage you. You don't have to carry it alone. You don't have to keep it buried. Speaking it to someone safe can be the first step in reclaiming your worth and letting go of shame. There's one more way shame quietly shows up, especially for women, and that's in the way we say, I'm sorry. Have you ever apologized for existing in a space? Maybe you're in someone's way, or you apologize for asking a question or for expressing a feeling or for taking up someone's time? Or do you apologize for needing someone's help? That's not humility. That's shame. It's shame disguised as politeness. When we say I'm sorry without a reason, we're often trying to shrink ourselves to make others more comfortable. But you don't need to apologize for being human, for having feelings. You don't need to apologize for having needs or taking up space or having emotions. What if instead I'm sorry you said, thank you for waiting, or I appreciate your time, or I needed to say that, thank you. Let's practice replacing unnecessary apologies with self-respect. It's not about being rude, it's about being retooled. It means instead of saying I'm sorry, you're saying thank you, which is actually the more appropriate way to respond. It's about being rooted in your worth. Here's the truth. Just because you feel shame doesn't mean it's true. We can feel shame from someone else's mistake, from the way we were raised, or from painful experiences that were never our fault. That doesn't make it yours to keep. So, how do we begin to let it go? How do we let go of shame? There's multiple ways, but here are 3 powerful steps. First of all, you need to name it. You need to recognize shame. Shame thrives in silence. So journaling is one of the best tools I know for healing. So try asking yourself, what am I ashamed of? Where did this belief come from? You might be surprised at how clearly your story unfolds when you give yourself permission to tell it, even if you're just telling it to yourself. That's the place to start, though. The second is to challenge it. Once you recognize it and you name it, look at it critically and ask, is this shame based in truth? Or is it an old lie I've been carrying around for years? We often hold beliefs that were shaped by trauma and not truth. This is where healing begins, by questioning what no longer serves us. The third step is to replace it. Replace shame with something else. Here's where you rewire your emotional script. Speak life into your story. Say, I am not what happened to me. I am who I choose to become. Use this affirmation from my book, which says, I give myself permission to be free from shame that was never mine to carry in the first place. You can say that out loud now if you want to. Again, I give myself permission to be free from the shame that was never mine to carry. It's not about pretending shame never existed. It's about releasing it step by step. Friends, you are not alone. Shame is powerful, especially when we've gone through everything we've been through. I'm going to read you an excerpt from my book, which kind of helps you understand how shame impacted my journey to heal. When I lost my dad in 2015, my emotional state was in a dark place. My support system had disappeared, so I faked it to get through day-to-day life. I was too proud to ask for help. All of the losses I had experienced in those 5 years had left me spiraling to find a way to move forward. I was physically exhausted and emotionally drained. After years of repressing my feelings, I couldn't even feel them anymore. Yet I knew something was wrong. I was numb, depressed, and anxious all at the same time. Grief is complex and not a linear process. It can resurface unexpectedly and be triggered by events, other traumas, people, or many other circumstances. In 2016, I lost my dear friend Lauren to metastatic breast cancer. I was left with survivor's guilt after Lauren's death. This is a complex emotion that arises after surviving a traumatic event when others did not, leading to feelings of shame, guilt, self-blame. Lauren was one of my closest friends. She was diagnosed with breast cancer about 3 years after me. Her diagnosis was changed to stage 4 when it became metastatic. And after a 10-year dance with what she affectionately called armpit cancer, we lost Lauren to her disease. That was survivor's guilt for me. And it caused a lot of shame. But I learned about shame and I learned to heal from it by being vulnerable and having the courage to ask for help. Shame is powerful, but it's not permanent. And it's not a reflection of who you are. You are not broken. You are becoming whole, becoming free, becoming you. If this message has touched your heart, I want to invite you to explore more in my book, Nurture Emotional Wellbeing for Women. It's filled with real stories, reflections, and gentle practices to help you reconnect your strengths and your worth. Before we go, I want to hear from you. Drop a heart in the comments if you've ever struggled with shame, or share a time when you realized you were carrying shame that didn't belong to you. Shame of surviving was not something I needed to be ashamed of. And once I learned that, I was able to let that go. So let's support one another in releasing shame and stepping into healing. Thank you for being here. I see you and I'm proud of you. And as always, I'm cheering you on.